We can call the meeting to order. So I think the plan here tonight is, everyone got their agenda, so we'll have Daisy do the oath of office, that'll make everyone official, and then Dave will have a general discussion, and then once we appoint a chairperson, typically that chairperson will then take over the meeting, and it's yours from that point on. So, I don't know, Daisy, you want to make your rounds?
Yes,
I
yes.
think we're gonna do everybody together, right?
Everybody together, so
everybody together.
everybody
Okay.
can stand. That's doing it, Dan.
Everybody should have an oath.
You sit. You sit, you guys sit. You guys already all took an oath.
We already did.
So,
Okay.
we don't have to do them again.
Okay, all right.
So the oath is next to you guys, so if you want to kind of like read along so that you kind of know, don't have to remember exactly what Daisy said, but it's in front of you, she'll break it down.
Okay, what I'm gonna say, when I say the word I, then each one of you say your names. Can they say it collectively?
Yep.
Yes, just say it collectively. Okay, are we ready? Okay. I. Well, okay. Do hereby swear. That I will support and defend. The Constitution and laws. Of the United States of America. The Constitution and laws. Of the State of Ohio. The Charter. Ordinances and resolutions. Of the City of Twinsburg, Ohio. And will faithfully. Honestly. And impartially. Discharge the duties. As a member of. The Justice. Equality. Diversity. And Inclusions Committee. To the best of my ability. As I shall answer. To God. Congratulations. Thank you. And now, Mr. Maester.
If you guys want to all sign those, I'll need to collect those at the end of the meeting.
Yeah, just make sure Shannon gets those.
And then just a reminder we have one microphone for all of us, so if we can speak so everybody can hear, the mic should pick it up.
Yeah, and also, we are Zooming, right, Mark? Yes. So, we have set up so these meetings will be by Zoom. If we have participants that want to come in during audience participation, they'll have an opportunity. They'll send an email in to Mark or Shannon, and we'll be able to bring them in if they have questions to ask. But just heads up, all the city meetings are, we're not live, right, Mark? We're just...
Correct.
Okay. So, but it will be broadcast, or it will be, we keep our public record of this, like anything else. So, tonight, we're going to ask you, first of all, thanks to all of you for agreeing to participate in this, and I look forward to getting a little more of a routine where we're meeting on a regular basis as we move through this. But I know some of you, at least Crystal, maybe might be the only one that has been on a city committee before, but the chairman, we're going to ask you to elect or appoint a chairman and a vice chairperson tonight. That person really is responsible for just running through the agenda on a regular basis through the meeting. That person will probably also work with Shannon as far as scheduling the agenda, maybe new agenda items that come up that you want to add to it. Running the meeting, but has no additional authority over anybody else. It's just really we need somebody to be able to run that meeting. And I want to briefly touch on, Shannon had sent out a questionnaire asking for some input from you guys a while back about some of the questions you might have or issues. A lot of the feedback we got related to the schools. While I think we probably all agree this type of forum, this type of committee is needed in the school, we are separate from the schools. We have separate funding, separate boards, separate everything, but we do recognize, we work with the schools as far as, strong city, strong school. We appreciate that, but we don't have a lot of input on any policy changes the schools might make, even though we agree with a lot of the issues that were brought up. So I just wanted to point that out. And same thing with the township. We had talked about, do we expand this to the township, and we haven't yet. This is all city, either employees or residents, and maybe down the road we can talk about that. But really, this is just city of Twinsburg at this point. We have, as you work through this agenda, you'll see we have established 3 subcommittees. Talking through this as a big group, we thought maybe if we established subcommittees to form smaller groups, that those groups could talk about some of those independent issues in those subcommittees and then bring them back to report to this committee as a whole and further discuss. So as we work through this, you'll see the 3 subcommittees: the community outreach, justice and police relations, and city employment diversity. Those are 3 pretty large subcommittees that cover a large area, a lot of information, obviously. But if we divide up into that, and the thought is, as we work through this, give some thought to the idea that the subcommittees will each have their own chairperson. And we'll let that chairperson, if you want to have your subcommittee meeting by Zoom, you're more than welcome to do that. If you want to have it here, we'll make arrangements to whatever we can do with scheduling a room. But rooms are hard to come by, and maybe those subcommittees meeting by Zoom, you can do it on your own time, whatever works best for everybody in that subcommittee, with the idea that you'll be coming back and the chairperson will be reporting back to the committee as a whole. Every meeting will have unfinished business, new business, or miscellaneous. And I think that that's probably going to be real important for this group, because with news and with how fast things are moving between, if we go a month between all getting together, there's going to be new things coming up that we're going to probably want to discuss. All right, I mean, look at what's happened since the last time we met. So all of those issues we could fill a hole to our meeting with if we wanted to. So that'll always be there, to fill in if you have something to discuss at miscellaneous. So I don't know if people have given thought to anybody that is interested in being the chairperson. If anybody wants to volunteer and say I'm interested, or if you've had conversations, if you're to that point where you would want to move then to appoint a chairperson, because like the mayor said, then that chairperson will then take over the meeting from here on out. So is there anybody at this point, I guess I would ask for volunteers if somebody is interested or wants to explain why they might be interested in being the chairperson. Bueller. No? Nobody? Probably shouldn't be a city employee, that's a little
Right, yeah, it would be a resident.
Okay. Well, we're gonna have to find somebody, so maybe as we work through it, somebody steps up, or we can just volunteer, all right.
I think Daisy just told me.
There we go.
I don't mind being chair.
Okay.
I tend to run through agendas relatively quickly though, so I would say that if you are chairing a subcommittee, please come prepared. That will get you quickly. I would then ask for somebody to self-nominate to be a very strong vice chair.
Dave, you need a formal motion,
Not if Val's the only person that is, I assume.
Doesn't have to be that way.
We have a motion to appoint Lavelle as chairperson. Any other nominations? Seeing no other nominations, we have our chairperson.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Good job, Daisy.
Thank you. Thank you.
So-
Anytime.
Maybe get called on, the Bell's
So
just
for
gonna
those,
pick a
for those that haven't been part of city committees or groups, typically Robert Rules of Order kind of, so there are typically going to be motions. So if there's any recommendations, I anticipate that there'll be recommendations from this group either back to me or to city council or to city operations and those kind of things. So as a group, you would typically do a motion to recommend or do something like that. So anything that the group wants to do officially, we would kind of follow that Robert Rules of Order kind of thing. So,
Thank you. I will dig out my copy and blow out the dust.
you don't need that. We
I
can
can
wing
I
it.
can provide you a copy.
So Dave, are you going to move forward with seeking the vice chairperson, or is that
Well, if you'd like to see if we have nominations for the vice chair.
taking nominations from the floor for the vice chair? Looking people directly in the eye. Sure. I think I have that's a nod, that counts.
I saw it.
You didn't say no, so I'm not saying no.
Thank you. Right. We have our right. Do we need a formal motion, or because he's volunteered?
We'll go ahead and go with that, I think we're good.
Emmanuel?
Just so you know.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, congratulations.
And as far as I know, there is no audience participation. Nobody had signed up, so we can move on to goals and objectives.
So I will, I guess, jump in, goals and objectives. Shannon, did anyone send in any goals and objectives?
So we had a few that came in, and I apologize, I want to probably be out of the office this afternoon, so I didn't get to put them all together for everyone. I only had 3 responses, I think, so. Most of them, pertain to bringing the community closer together with and police, to bring people from different racial groups together for our community, to be productive in coming up with policies to deal with the racial police divide before it impacts our community, to examine, ensure, and celebrate the diversity that exists in our community, and to ensure that business opportunities in the community represent the diversity present in the community. And then the other one, another one was advocate for systemic change to protect and promote justice, equality, diversity, inclusion, and racial unity in our community. I think that's it for, and one more, the goal is to have open communication and conversations that people haven't been willing or comfortable to have. So that was what I had received back.
Thank you. I think those are all great. Do we have anything to add? Do we have some officers? Anyone want to weigh in?
The 2 officers did
Oh, they were
part of the responses.
All right, so we can go table by table. Stop here. Did you have any other goals or objectives that you wanted to add about?
When they were kind of the same, and I was repeating pretty much.
Yep.
No others, but I would say just a mission should be just to be intentional about what we're doing, and really hear from the community about where we see specific issues and really attack those issues and with solutions, versus just kind of a lot of the fluff. And I sit on a lot of committees like this, and I think just making sure that it's meaningful and impactful, and we're intentional about what we're doing. So.
That's great. I think Emmanuel and I can both agree that we will lean on you for some of that direction. Should we start venturing into the fluff? All right. Andrew?
I don't have any specific goals and objections. I think that those were great. I think that my concern with this community is that we don't get the data and the information pulled from the community and pulled from the city and pulled from the police department to understand where we actually need to focus. So, my biggest concern, is there a budget for this committee, and can we hire an actual D&I expert to come in and do accountability and get information? And you can't go anywhere unless you know where you are. So that would be my recommendation first, is to get that person to come in and look at the policies of the city, look at the rules and regulations, look at the employment data, look at the police data, like how many calls are you guys getting in for, hey, there's a parked car outside of my house, versus actual information. And so I would say that we need to start there. which requires an expert and which requires money. And then from there, you can then go to see what your goals and objectives are and what the mission of this committee would be. Otherwise, I do think it's just a lot of talk because you don't have a direction, because you don't know where you are. So that would be my recommendation, and that's where I would start.
I think that's excellent, and that also sounds like a really good point for you to start as chair of a subcommittee. To gain some information. I'm starting with questions of budget and absolutely how we gather and distill that data. Because I think you're right. These are the subcommittees that we've selected are exactly, like I think they all go towards those goals and objectives, but you're right. We don't know where we're going. We don't know where we're starting. Thank you for volunteering.
Oh, yeah, you're so welcome.
And you, Jeremy, you said you chaired.
Yes,
Okay.
I did.
Do you have anything to add now that you're here?
Well, just something I'll share. Moving forward, 2021, new year. I hope everybody has not only goals with this group, but personal goals and business goals, professionally for yourselves. Bring that positivity. I think that's what I'm trying to, get down there in the police department with some things and my family life, all those things through a new perspective. So we have a lot of young officers who are learning a lot of new things. And sometimes the perspective is through a small lens, and we need to open that lens wide. We do have some young officers that are very ambitious, and when I say that, I don't mean like go out hard charge. They're looking at both sides of the fence. A guy goes to a criminal interdiction class, which is, picking up on criminal indicators that you see. But at the same time, he's reading a book about the racial inequality on traffic stops. In a great book, he's telling me all about it. I'm like, I gotta dive into this thing too. It was all based out of Kansas City and studies that were actually done and the disparity. So it's like he's trying to see both sides of the fence and I'm like, well, I go to this class, but I gotta learn this side too. So I guess, everybody to just kind of see something somebody else said in my life recently is you gotta change your place, change your pace, and thus change your perspective. So when we're all discussing things, I'm trying not to look through my small lens, trying to look through everybody's lens. And that's only gonna help me become a better person and a better officer for you all, which I serve you all. So I need to know your perspective on how we're doing things, how we can be better. And I think that you mentioned with pulling some statistics, which I think we've worked on some of that already with some things, but probably a better way in which we could be doing it, and that needs to be looked into as well. Some of the policies I can speak a lot to in our format with down at the police department, how we have those set up and answer those questions.
That's great. Real quick research that can be. Okay, Emmanuel?
Yeah, I think I shared one with Shannon already, but I think one of the things that I see is we're not gonna agree on everything at the same time. One of the things that I just want to point out that no matter where we stand, we in our agreement, we need to do it with grace and respect and all. So that's one thing that I just want to point out also. And Ted, you sent out a report that you start doing now monthly in regard to what Andrea just pointed out. Is that something that we're going to continue doing, or is just one time?
No, that's something that will come out on a monthly basis. And I think probably more particularly what you're referring to is some of the data from the police department and some of those kind of things which break down all of our citations, all of our arrests, and breaks it down with a lot of detail. Your question is, I want more detail of how we got to those, probably to that point. So I think as we go through this, you kind of mentioned budget and other things. And that's where kind of the recommendations or requests can kind of come into, if your committee says, okay, we want this type of data, we have a lot of very sophisticated systems that can pull a lot of information. We just need to set up the parameters on how to get the information. So I think, yeah, we can get some of the details on a lot of the things that I think involve our police department, involve some of the activities that occur. I don't know any real information about the specialist we were talking about, so I'd like to have some more kind of conversation about how that works. But the report that got put out, anybody else see the report? So it's a report that is an internal report for me that I had my executive assistant kind of dress up, so to speak, so that I can start sending it out to the public. That goes through basically every department in the city and shows a lot of the details of the operations that go on behind the scenes that a lot of the residents just aren't really aware of. And part of that report is with the police department, and it goes through the number of calls we get through dispatch. It goes through all of the citations and arrests and the different things, and it breaks that down in some level of detail. But I encourage you to pull that up and take a look at it.
I'm gonna email you guys the link, so you guys can look at it.
So is it Crystal? I'm sorry. Crystal.
Yeah.
The extent of my glasses, because I'm like right there.
I understand. I'll say that budgets dictate priorities. And so if this is a priority, there will be a budget associated with it. And so we'll see how much of a priority it is. And so I hope that there will be a budget. And then we can talk about, you know, hiring a black consultant or a minority consultant that we can work with to help facilitate an agenda and see these things through to implementation. And so this is not just something that comes into a report that sits on a shelf that we regard and say, I was once a part of that, and then it goes nowhere. And so I'd also like to say that there's a big difference between equality and equity. And so I cringe a little bit seeing equality because I don't think that equality is very realistic to me. Equity is what I think is more realistic and something that we should seek to achieve. It's not about like that. I look at the cartoon where they're trying to get everybody to look over the fence at the baseball game. We can send it out. I'll send it to Shannon to send to everybody. It's like, it's not about everybody getting the same size box so that they can see over the fence. It's about what size box do you need so that you can see over the fence.
That's right.
And so we need equity so that everybody gets what they need, not equality. Because even if everybody got the same thing, somebody's still gonna come up short. And so equality is not gonna get us where we need to be here. And then I'm always a proponent of community conversations. I wrote a report in 2017 called Step 1, Shut Up and Listen, because I believe the first step to community engagement is not making assumptions about community. Step 1 is to shut up and listen to people. And part of that is making sure that we have principles for how we engage community so that we're respecting community when we go in and meet with them. And having realistic expectations. So we're not listening to people and getting our hopes all high and then walk away and do nothing. And then now the community is really having high expectations because they sat down and met with this equity committee or this Jedi committee and then nothing came of it. And so we need to have some Hamed principles or some kind of principles for community engagement so that we are respecting community when we go in. So those are some of the things that are at the top of mind for me right now. And before you sign me up for anything, I have a 3-year-old, a 6-year-old, and 2 jobs. So I think this is the extent of my involvement. But I'm happy to help you however you'd like via Zoom.
I have
In my
3 teenagers will
life.
babysit your children, and they can play with my 6-year-old and my 2-year-old.
Okay, that's the ministry I'm about. Thank you.
Seriously though,
I felt an assignment coming, and I was like.
You were right though, you know, because the level of passion you have, the level of experience you have in that role, particularly for the community outreach committee, is invaluable, and I would ask that you reconsider.
See, I already knew you was gonna haze me up like that.
Subcommittees can be held via Zoom, so.
Yes, you can hold those meetings whenever you want via Zoom. If 6 a.m. works for you and your committee, that's fine. Just saying, whatever works for you, your family, and your life, as long as you share this subcommittee.
We'll revisit.
Yes. Okay. Gentlemen, Dave, do you want to weigh in?
Just to indicate, well, first of all, do you want to make a motion to change equality to equity?
That was next on the agenda. I was going to go to you guys, and we're definitely going to
It's
do
your
that.
world, whatever y'all, I don't wanna, whatever y'all
The
feel.
chair will entertain a motion if you would like to make it.
Most organizations like this use equity instead of equality, so.
We just changed ours at work. And I think now the time is right? We're just getting started, so we can mark it out on the oath and change it, but you making that motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
So second, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes. We are changing the JEDI committee from Justice, Equality, Diversity, and Inclusion to Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. And I would just ask for Shannon's sake that everybody update their oath if they haven't already.
Great. And then just real quick, I know we've had mentions of data, and some of that we have. We have notebooks for all of you where we're starting to put this together. We have our Civil Service Commission rules that cover hiring, civil service hiring in the city. We have Michael he's sick, otherwise he would have been here tonight. From an HR standpoint, we'll be able to get you numbers concerning number of full-time employees, and the makeup and the breakdown from departments that those full-time employees are in. I know we are going to do a deep dive into some data and information regarding the police department, but I'd like to look at that. I mean, some of it I already have for the last 3 or 4 years. We're working our way backwards, but we have that, and I guess I would ask some of the questions that came in when we asked were of what information you wanted. Somebody said, or a couple people said salary, and we weren't sure what was meant. So we do have salary ordinances, we do have our collective bargaining agreements, which cover pretty much all our employees and their salary, but they're not individuals. We're not going to give you, or we didn't give you the individual names in this, but we gave you the salaries of all the positions, and then we have the people that are in those positions. So anything additional as you get this, please ask. We'll be able to get it to you, I think, pretty quickly. But I do agree with everybody that brought up having an expert in this. I've been on a couple committees.
I'm sorry, I think you're looking at me, so, but like I agree that you can get all the data and information. The issue is synthesizing that and then putting that to a goal, and I don't know. I mean, there's people that have degrees in this, right? And they do it as, and I don't know, I apologize, I forget what everybody does in here, but I know that for my firm, we dove deep into that data. We gave out surveys that were also looked at about your employees' perceptions, how they feel. It kind of goes to what Crystal was talking about, like not making an assumption about what your community thinks, but actually, giving out surveys to your employees, to your constituents, to see what their perceptions are, because you really don't know. I can tell you my own personal stuff. We all can, but that might not be the majority of what we need to focus on. So that's my only concern, is that how to take all of that data and information and actually put it in, use it to implement some new ideas. And so that's my only thing. And I don't know if anybody has expertise in this room to do that.
No, and I think what I'm hearing from Dave and from Mary Yates is that the data's there. We just need to figure out what it is we want to know from it. And that's where our expert comes in, right? I think we get what we can get in terms of from each subcommittee and kind of go through and start to answer questions like, okay, do we know salaries? Do we know hiring rates? Do we know traffic stop rates, right? And then at that point, determine what is it we want an expert to come in and tell us, or what can they do with this data, and then we start shopping. Because my fear with hiring an expert before we really know the questions we want to answer is how much are we going to pay somebody to tell us what questions we're asking them? And that's always kind of my trial strategy is I go in with a list, like, this is my plan for trial. Can you support this or not? Right, what can you do? And so if we can bring somebody in who can take the data that we're able to pull, it sounds like in a somewhat sophisticated way, right? So we're not asking them to go do these surveys. Our subcommittees are coming up with a survey, we're reaching out to the community, and then we're involving the expert. So I think if we can kind of meld minds here, right, use the expertise we have in-house, and then bring in somebody with that degree, with that knowledge, to help us get to that next step, I think will be good.
And we may also want to look at the expert to maybe give us some roadmaps on maybe what they've done in the past with other municipalities and some of the success rates that they've had. And then we can, as a committee, maybe look at that to determine maybe which way we want to go. Maybe another option to consider, as well, because we may not necessarily know what all the issues are outside of, like, what your personal issues are. I may have had some issues or things that I personally have, but I don't know if that's going to speak to the entire community.
Right.
So we may want to just get some direction from the consultant. Maybe we do a initial hour consultation or something like that, so we can just get a roadmap and then we can get some direction on where we're going to go.
So Akil, what I'm hearing is you are volunteering to compile a list of experts that we can.
I know of a person.
But that's great though, right?
I
See,
know
look,
of a
you're
person.
already bringing it to the table.
If anybody knows anybody, if you want to email it to me, I can compile a list.
Awesome.
So that way it's not on one person. I'm happy to do that.
I didn't mean to dump it all on
No,
you,
that's
but
fine. I'm going to do it now, so I don't.
Okay, the other thing that was just brought up was other municipalities. I'd be happy to send an email out to the clerk organizations and see if there's any municipalities in the area that has done something like this, and then request through public records any information they have on it, so we can kind of look at that. If there is another community who's already done this, we can definitely get that information.
And one thing we could do, getting back to kind of some of the formalities that municipalities go through, is this group could put together a request for qualifications on RFQ, basically saying, here's what we're looking for, here's what we're looking to do, here's the criteria we're looking for this person to provide for us, here is the educational background or the experience we're looking for, and then we can create a request for qualifications that can be then sent out consistently to whoever we may know and advertise it, and then we may get one response, we may get 10, and then the group can decide, okay, here's the top 3 based on how they answered that request for qualifications. We'd like to bring the 3 of them in the group interview. So we do that all the time with different things that we're doing through the city, so that might be a process that we could use to get an individual, rather than, hey, Akil knows this guy and he knows a guy, but he's going to come in here and talk to us and give us a quote on doing this work. I mean, it's a little more formal of a process to go through. So
I'm a consultant, but my first thing is, what are we responding to? And so as a consultant, the first thing I would tell you is you need a landscape analysis to know where are we starting. Like Andrea said, we need to know where we're starting to know where we're trying to go. And so that's like figuring out what's the demographics of the city. We haven't even discussed that. What's the demographics of the city? What are the diversity numbers associated with the subcommittees? Have we decided whether we want to have community conversations? If we have poll questions, what are the questions we want to ask the community? And then how do we want to launch? Is it a survey? Is it having Zoom conversations with community members? If we then we have this data and we can figure out what the obstacles are that we're trying to respond to. But We don't even know what the problem is, aside from everybody's individual perceptions of what their issues are in the community at this stage. And so I think that's part of what I'm working on.
And I did a little bit of research about this before, and online there's a couple places, and one I would direct you to is the Local and Regional Government Alliance of Race and Equity. And I can send it to Shannon to send out, but they've looked at a lot of municipalities and counties and have come up with a succinct plan. And I can just say, you know, I'm looking at it right now. A racial equity tool is a simple set of questions, but it basically talks about the vision, the data, who you're partnering with, what the plan is, how to implement, and then how to strengthen once that implementation is done. But they give a lot of good information, and they probably could help with, you know, this particular county was out west, but it could probably help with some ideas of who could help us with this here, because it does start, yes, we have a vision, we have that, right? But then now it's about the data, you know, it's about collecting information from your communities, and then that would, so but again, it's the Local and Regional Government Alliance on Race and Equity. And I thought they had some really good information and good reports that I thought were very helpful when I was looking into this.
I did pull this, it'll be in your binders also, it's from the National League of Cities. It sounds like it's similar to what you are talking about on how, you know, how to handle this, the starting points and, you know, how to move forward. So this is part of the binder that we're putting together for you guys. So I'm happy to email it out in the interim so you guys have it too. So I'll send that and the link that Andrea has.
So I want to back up a little bit, because I think we are kind of putting the cart before the horse a little bit, and we should get our skeleton together before we start adding meat. So Mary Yates and poor Jeffrey, I'm sorry. We haven't made our way around to Jeffrey yet, or Miss Daisy. Mary Yates, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
No, I think that, I agree with, I know Akil and looking at this group and where we can go, because for me, I want it to be productive, I want it to be efficient, I want it to have direction, I want it to be sustainable. You know, those are, I've been part of a lot of groups and that start off with really good vision and a really good dialogue, and then they just fade. And I don't want to see that happen here. I've seen it with some of the things that we've done here at the city, and I've seen it outside in my professional life. So that's kind of, those are very broad terms and not very specific, but I want to try to do something that has a long-term impact on Twinsburg, not just, hey, we got together and we talked about some really cool stuff, and then everyone just kind of faded off to their life. And I know, you know, we all have families and commitments, and I know at our church, Joe said one time that serving your community has to be painful a little bit. You know, serving others has to be painful a little bit. You're giving up something to do, you know, what you're committing to serve and to do. And that, you know, I think for all of us, that, you know, the bigger picture is we've committed to doing this, and we're giving up something else to be here to make things better. So that's kind of my goal.
I offered several of those on the list. Because one of the reasons why I didn't want to become chair, because at my job I'm chairing a diversity, equity, and inclusion committee at work. So I didn't want to be overburdened with it. However, a lot of the information that I can acquire there, I'll see what I can bring into this situation as well. Because obviously, as a professor, I'm looking at a different demographic of, you know, faculty and students and things like that. However, there are some things that cross that I could bring in as well. But I guess I would encourage all of us to keep our eyes out on things that may be going on in other places that we can bring into this committee, because there may be some struggles or some successes in other places that maybe we can learn from before they become a struggle here, or that we can make a success here. So I just think keeping our eyes out. I'm always reading articles and things of that nature already, but now I can start doing it with more of a city kind of purpose when I'm reading articles, just to see things that I can bring into this committee. So, and I just encourage everybody to do that as well.
First of all, I just want to commend everyone in this room for being a part of this committee, because it means so much to me. You don't know how much it means to me. Back in the I had my first job, and I was hired not because of my qualifications, not because of my education, but the color of my skin. Fast forward 2 years, I asked the supervisor, I said, you looked at my qualifications, you looked at my education, and I said, is that why you hired me? I said, one-on-one. It was during the affirmative action era. And he said, I saw something in you, and it was all of the above, but you met the qualifications, plus you were a black female, and I was single at the time. And I never thought that I would be able to be in a meeting talking about the color of your skin. A meeting that's, look at this diversity, look at the education, look at what we're doing now. You fast forward, almost 50 years ago when things were going on at that time. And it took a long time for me to see the fruits of the labor that people have done back in the 60s, back in the 70s, and back in the 80s. And it took us this long, all these years, to come together, to be a part of a justice and equity and diversity inclusion. Right now, this is a time of celebration. This is a win-win for all of us. We all need to have an input, whether you're black or you're white, because you've been discriminated against at some time. Everybody has. It could have been maybe your height or law director. It could have been your size or how intelligent you were. We have all been discriminated against. But the thing is, we as a black race, before we were born, before we knew we were going to be alive, it started before then. Whatever race, whatever generation, it was a generational curse. And I thank God for all of you for being so sincere and so honest and educated with all of the information that you're feeding to us. And I think it's great that we could finally come together and not only talk about this, but it's like a mini celebration, because we're making a difference, not for 2021. It's starting right now. But this should go on until the world ends. It should not be about the color of your skin or the race or the education. It should not be about that. So people in this room, we have a big job to do. We have a lot to do, because the things that we're doing, it's not an overnight success. I ran for office in the city of Twinsburg. I saw all kinds of signs. You would never think that they would be posted. So we're not out of the woods yet, let me tell you, in the city of Twinsburg, because I saw them 8 years ago, 4 years ago, same sign up. Maybe they put them up just for election, but it's here. Number two, and I did talk to the mayor about this, you know, being a certified grant writer, and I don't know if I mentioned this to you, Mayor, about possibly, you know, can this be a nonprofit 501c3? Therefore, this committee, this Jedi committee would never go away. Can we do this down the road? This way we could get monies, we could, well, we'll be under the city of Twinsburg, but I just want you to speak if we can do that. Name it Jedi, make it a 501c3, get it funded without getting any monies from the city. Is that a possibility, or does this committee have to be under the city of Twinsburg?
No, it can, I mean, the committee can go on, you can jump in whatever, but the committee can move on its own and form its own organization as a 501c3. I know some of the things that we talked about, you were looking at potential grants from organizations, which it's unlikely they're going to make that to a city. They would typically make that to a 501c3 where they make sense to their business. But I know budget came up a couple times, and while we have not designated a specific dollar amount, because that number is really kind of unknown, I can tell you there has been conversations regarding the fact, and I know I mentioned this to Daisy, that I anticipate as we went through our budget process that this group would have recommendations on things that need to be done, either specifically deriving from the group or as the city as a whole. I know Michael, HR director, is looking at diversity training for all our employees right now. So those are something that is happening outside of anything that this group is doing, and that's a city expense, and of course part of our, our overall budget for the city. So, I mean, I anticipate there being recommendations that flow from this committee that we will be spending money on. So, and I guess professional services is a very broad area in the city that we budget a significant amount of money in that we can spend on each year. So, but, so that, I don't know if that helps answer the question a little bit, but we are committed to this, and we are committed to doing what we need to do citywide as an organization to fund this and address it. Back to Daisy, I think as this committee looks at its path and where it's going and what it wants to accomplish and where it wants to go in the future, I think an organization in our community that has a part of its own self-funding and its own direction and its own board, I think would be fantastic. So I don't know if we decide that this meeting, but I think it's something that is in the future that as we kind of get our feet underneath where we're going and how we're going to do it, I think it's something that I'd be proud to know that, we have an organization that's fighting for all this and making a difference in the community. So, I don't know if that answered your question.
Yes, you did. Thank you.
And I obviously didn't say anything too wrong, or David was going to.
He's making
Still
notes.
time.
Speaking of time, is this an hour meeting?
We're trying to keep it close to an hour. If everyone's good, I would say maybe if we can take an extra 15 minutes, because we do need to at least get through the subcommittee portions and stuff, so.
I have one quick question though, to Mayor Hayes. Are there any metrics or, I guess, what is the city's current plan for like diversity, equity, and inclusion? Or is this part of it? Like, have you all come up with, a strategic plan around that? And then is this committee kind of a subset of that, or are we really kind of the first pillars of putting something together.
Probably yes to all that, but I think, you know, for me, not having more than just a personal drive and commitment when I took office in 15 to start looking at some of these issues, and really for me it was more particular to our employee base. I guess I am, part of the excitement of me for this community is to help define some of that direction for the city and how we get there. We've had some challenges, and Dave can attest to a lot of frustrations as it relates to our city operations and how we become, having a more diverse workforce, and you know, as I work to be very intentional on how we do that, there's been just a lot of challenges and, you know, that we face. So I think I would love for this group to be part of that plan moving forward. And I think that's why one of the subcommittee groups is, you know, addresses that. I haven't looked at, I guess, the community broadly as a whole in terms of trying to get my arms around a strategic plan on our community and what we can do and how we can do it, and this group can address, and hopefully help address some of that stuff. I mean, a lot of it is, I'm proud of and I talk about, but I don't really know how to truly define it or change it. It's, you know, I know we have a diverse community. I'm proud of that. I talk about that. How do we embrace that? How do we, you know, I just don't know kind of where to go with a lot of things. So, you know, that's where I'm just being honest, and I just want, you know, I think we're known for being a diverse community. I think people move to Twinsburg because we're a diverse community. I think, you know, it's talked about and embraced in our school system. I don't know how to really,
I get it.
you kind of get me, I mean,
And so I would bring this up that, so I'm with the Board of Realtors, and so on a local level with the Akron Cleveland Board of Realtors, and then on the state level. So we just completed our strategic plan for the state association, and in doing that strategic plan, we set, you know, 5 different pillars of the goals that we want for all the Board of Realtors for the whole state of Ohio. And then from there, diversity, equity, inclusion was the metrics that whenever we go out in each one of those pillars, we line up diversity, equity, inclusion in each one to ensure that we're addressing it. So for instance, when the city sends out a marketing piece, does it reflect diversity, equity, and inclusion? Or is it all, you know, white little boy and girl on the cover of that? You know, what the specific wording that the city communicates, or if it's the schools, does it meet those metrics that are in place? But that is something that really has to come from the top, and then it kind of moves down and permeates, I think, through, you know, so, you know, maybe that is something that the city's gonna have to do, is say, hey, you know, we need to have more of a strategic plan for everything, you know, and then diversity, equity, inclusion, or JEDI will be a part of that, you know, and we can immerse ourselves in the things that are there, maybe a way to attack how we look at what we do. Because otherwise, I don't know, it's just, I mean, the budget is very important, so we hear that, but I mean, there's so many things that you can really jump into and say, okay, well, let's address it from this perspective, or let's address it from that perspective. But you know, we may just be just kind of all over the place.
Yeah.
In one sense, so, you know, we definitely need to get some direction, you know, but it didn't sound, that's why I wanted to understand what the goals were from the city's perspective, because if the city has a larger plan to say, you know, we're taking a stance, this is what we're gonna do, and then now we have this committee that's gonna backfill that, that's something that's very different than what I think I'm maybe feeling, so.
Yeah, I think that, and I agree, and what I get worried about is the group, like, kind of wrapping its arms around too big of a,
Right.
it's like trying to hug an elephant and steer it to go somewhere. You know, I'd like to see the groups focus on small, use all the resources and all the brain power in this room and focus on a small subject that can make a difference in the community and kind of move. I don't see, like, we're not gonna fix the city and all that's going on in 6 months, so I guess in my mind, I'm looking long-term through whatever time I have here and beyond, of taking areas and, because I don't know. I don't want to see us create this beautifully written strategic plan and it has this kind of envelope over the city if I can't implement it in small areas and make changes. Does that make sense, or?
Oh, yeah, I'm all about some small wins. I mean, that,
So-
you know, we definitely should look at that for sure.
I know for me, it seems like it's we have a lot of different stuff going on, like, I don't know where we're going right now, because we're just
Yeah.
kicking stuff out. I know, once we start our 3 subcommittees, I mean, just to get a foundation or a start, because we're all supposed to meet or get together or something. I think the subcommittee should get together and just come up with questions about whatever your committee is that you need to address the community. So come up with 10, 15, 20, however many questions that we want to ask the community, whether it's community outreach, what we want to see in those little subsections we have, or just in the police relations, and we've got to come up with questions, and if we come up with questions for those 3 groups, we can come back here right before the group and go and talk about them, and then we kind of focus in, because we talk about money, but we don't know where we're going to get the money from, or where we're going to get a consultant in, so we can't wait on that piece. We can't wait on somebody to come in and say, this is what you're going to talk about, this is what you're going to do. So if we at least start from our foundation to the foundation, we come back together and we can pick 1 or 2 things from each group to focus on, and at least start moving out until we can present something to someone coming in.
I see what I'm not.
I agree. I think these topics, and I don't know if Shannon created these from
From the responses that you
some of the
guys
responses.
responded back with.
I think these are a great start. I mean, I think if you sat here, you could probably create 30 subcommittees, but right now we have 3, and if we could start looking at these 3, and I could see strategic plans and a path in, you know, our city employment diversity. I could see a path and potential in our community outreach and those kind of things. So I guess that's, you know, I agree. I feel like we're kind of all over it. But we start narrowing down with these committees and see where they go. I think we can, you know, hopefully give some kind of direction and pick a path and a plan and move forward.
I agree. Okay, so in the interest of time, it is 8 p.m. and everybody has family at home, and some of us didn't eat dinner before we came. Very quick. Is there anything you would like to add?
I will keep mine very short, right? And so I ran across a quote the other day, and it said, "I'm going to wing it." And then underneath that, it said, "Me when I'm doing something that I absolutely should not wing," right? And to me, that speaks to, and it's been said a couple times, intention, right? Being intentional with what it is that we're coming to talk about. You know, and I think as we form goals, I think we should also make sure that we understand what success looks like for those goals, right? And again, we're probably too soon at this point because we don't have our goals, but understanding what success of an individual subcommittee or an individual action is going to be. That's all I got.
Well, I just, I really would the policies and some of those things, the changes that hopefully we talked about. I mean, I'm so impressed because I come in and have no idea where to begin. So the idea that you're presenting and just even pulling out, wherever you guys need me, I will be there. And my goal is as a council member to listen and we give you changes that you recommend in any way that I can help as a council person. So I'm excited. I think, I don't know where it's going because with learning, I feel like which one, but I do think that you have a good one, it's great experience as well.
So I will say this, I think that we're probably a little ways away from refining a mission statement in this meeting. And if anybody disagrees, let me know. But I really would like to push to these subcommittees, because I think we have 3, but the question that I have for all of you is, do you think these are the right 3? So we have community outreach, justice and police relations, city employment diversity. So they are 3 very large areas, and it sounds like we have data that we can start pulling from all of those almost immediately. But based upon the discussions that we've had thus far and understanding that we do, like Lauren said, want to narrow the scope of what we're doing so we can be impactful, are these 3 places that we feel comfortable starting? Yes, no, maybe so.
Yeah, I think city employment diversity is a good one.
Okay, is there anything that you can think of that's not here or that's not covered by these 3 that you're passionate about, that you joined this committee to pursue? Because what I don't want to do is have somebody who showed up here gung-ho ready to do something and we're just not touching it. No? Okay. So now I will entertain a motion from the floor to appoint a chair of the Community Outreach Committee or a volunteer to chair the Zoom only Community Outreach. To use their talents to lead the Community Outreach Committee.
Remember, it has to be a little.
The subcommittee is like, I think what we were talking about a little bit before, Dave, was like that you would meet at least one time in between our monthly whole group meetings. So it's one additional hour, hour and a half, 2 hours, however long you guys want to take. So to put some ideas.
And I'm not trying to throw you off, but
Please.
you know, the concept of subcommittees was kind of brought up. I mean, this group, as I see us hopefully long-term, I mean, we can take one of these topics and as a group start addressing it, and as we maybe get more comfortable with each other and what we can all offer, maybe subcommittees get formed from that. It's just a thought. I'm not trying to bail on the subcommittee concept, but, you know, there's a lot of, I guess, intimacy that we need to get with each other on how we're going to pursue things, and maybe we take a few meetings and figure that out. And then, you know, maybe talk about some of these areas, take 3 meetings and talk about community outreach. What does that look like and what do we want to see? Talk about police relations. And then from those discussions, we maybe roll into subcommittees. At that point, everyone's kind of got a sense of where everyone's coming from. And you may think, okay, justice and police relations is for me, and then after talking about the 3 committees, you're like, I want to be part of community outreach. So, just a thought.
I disagree with that. Sharon, do you have a timeline on these binders?
I'm hoping to have, I was kind of waiting for tonight to see if there's anything else that you guys were looking for to put in there. Dave and I have sat down over the last week or so, and we have a good handle on what we're using based on the responses you guys were looking for, and I was hoping to get them out to you by the March meeting. Okay. So that was kind of the goal.
Me personally, I want to hear what the committees have to say on each of these areas, and I can't be at 3 places at once, and so I mean, that's a little, you know, for me that, you know, we may all be able to contribute and get something out of talking about these subjects all together versus these other committees.
Within those binders, will those have this surveys that the city employees fill out recently? Because I think that's been brought up a few times about, like, responses from police and other areas in the city with regards to
I
some of
think
those
the
responses
survey-
might be helpful to this committee.
Are you talking about the one that went to employees, or? So just to give a little background, we did, of course, a community-wide survey recently that dealt more with just overall city amenities and how we pay for that and how we may have to pay for that in the future. Mr. Bellin orchestrated an employee-based anonymous survey. And so I assume at some point he's going to have a collection of data that go through, was it about 12 questions?
Yeah, there was, ultimately, there was about 30 questions. It was, as the mayor said, it was anonymous. You did not have to put any contact information on it at all. It is actually open until I think through the 12th is what we said. And yeah, it was asking things, it wasn't asking things specific to this committee, but it was asking things about, work-life balance and how, would you recommend, to others to work for the city of Twinsburg? How happy are you at work? Do you get the training that you need? Do you get the accessories and these kind of things? So yeah, I mean, I absolutely can share the relevant pieces of that with this group. I have no problem doing it. I don't have all the data yet. Like I said, it's I believe it's through the 12th, and then it'll take me a while to kind of go through that data, and yeah, I can absolutely share it.
Thank you. That's great. It sounds like a Gallup survey. A lot of this stuff is going.
Yeah, it was again the intent was to mimic to some degree the community survey that we did, and and make it in a way that no employee would feel. Threatens the wrong word, but they could be open and honest and frank, and they have that.
I mean, culture is really big for me, and I know when Greg brought up this concept, we were trying to figure out a way to engage our employees. We have a lot of employees that live in town, so having them provide us information it's kind of a win-win, because they're doing it, having all the inside knowledge, talking about our operations. So I think it was something, hopefully, I'm sure when it's all done, our information will be really beneficial to us.
So Jeremy can bring that up.
I just have a question. Are these meetings monthly?
So these are, but the hope is that the subcommittee meetings are at a minimum one in between each of these monthly meetings.
Now, since we're taking the time to figure each other out and do a few more of these individual meetings, can we do them bi-weekly to move a little bit further along?
I love this idea. So what if, in the interim, we do a Zoom meeting? Or the platform that we use is Teams, but if somebody has a Zoom account and wants to set it up, I'm fine with that too. And then between March, we all meet remotely. So we can have at least another bite at this apple and kind of start talking these things through. And then we come back together March 8th and maybe on a little more solid ground, a little more direction.
I'm sorry, I'm just gonna tell me what to do kind of person to do it. I don't know how to do this part of it.
That's okay. That's okay. We know where you want to be and we're going to get you there. So is there anyone who has any additional suggestions, or if we're moving down the list, new business? Because it sounds like, oh, sorry, Shannon.
No, it's okay. I guess we can talk about it in our next meeting date, but if we do a Zoom, it sounded like the consensus was Monday evenings worked for everybody. Does 2 weeks from tonight work? Like on the 22nd? And then the other question was, the start time of the meeting was pretty much a tie from when to start it, and we just chose 7 o'clock for this one because that's what it was at the last one. However, the other half was 6 o'clock. So it's an hour swing either way, but we have a preference. Yeah. I didn't know if there was, because it was split right down the middle in the start times, there was one person who picked 6:30. I was like,
Okay, we're going to do a hand vote. 6 p.m. All right, we have,
Well, raise your hands high.
raise your hands high.
Count them.
Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Great, for 6 p.m. Did you?
He's at work till 7, my bad.
Oh! Okay, well, we are a small committee, so we don't want to exclude anyone. And if you are at work until 7, is that every Monday?
No, it's every other, but,
And it just happens to be, that's the,
yeah, it's recurring right now, but it shouldn't be a problem.
okay.
For me, it doesn't matter, I don't, whatever, you tell me to show, I'll show.
I'm 6 only have done the other, but if anybody has strong preferences. Okay. So are we going with 6 p.m.? I had 7 hands.
We got 14 people,
That's
so.
exactly half.
Oh my goodness!
I'll get a tiebreaker.
Thank you. Are you trying for 6 or 7?
Yeah. Whatever, what's the, what?
Well, she
6.
has to be 10%.
6.
6?
I don't know.
6 p.m. via Zoom?
No,
On the 22nd, I'll send a reminder.
Thank you, Shannon.
No,
Okay.
I'll still be able to do it. I'm sorry, make sure, yeah. Thanks, Scott.
Just put your phone up on the crew.
If you have to duck out, why?
Okay, so we're gonna table subcommittees for the moment, and continue to meet as a unit on community outreach, justice and police relations, and city employment diversity. Moving on to unfinished business. I don't think there's necessarily any because this is a kind of a first meeting of sorts. Is new business we've covered quite a bit of. Anything else?
Just so I got my headset, so we're gonna be going over, for the next 3 meetings, we're gonna be going over the different subcommittees that we'll be doing. So next meeting on the 22nd, are we gonna be focusing on community outreach, just so we kind of get some questions in my head together?
That's what I was gonna say.
Yeah. I think that's a great idea. I like this order in terms of how we're gonna discuss them. So our meeting on the 22nd will be focused on community outreach. The meeting on the 8th, justice and police relations. And if everyone is amenable to it, we'll do another Zoom 2 weeks after that to focus on city employment diversity. And then the next live meeting, hopefully we'll be in a position to say for sure if we're gonna do subcommittees and if so, who's willing to chair them. Does that sound good? Okay. All right, anything miscellaneous?
If anybody has any topics or anything on community outreach, if you want to email them to me, then Lavelle and I will work on the agenda moving forward. But if you guys have anything specific, let us know. Question?
Okay, so next up is, our next meeting is not actually Monday, March 8th. It is now Monday, February 22nd.
Thanks.
At 6 p.m., not 7 p.m. Shannon, thank you. We'll send out a reminder. Unless there is any other business. Anybody? We adjourn at 8:14. All right, so you good, Matt.